what is the number one problem? Is it still the money?
Not really. I think there's multiple of these problems, and the money component is just an amplifier. The idea of democracy and that voting is a right, I think that's a massive problem. Like, if we're being honest, most people are retarded. Most people eat seed oils. That right there, and most people think Bitcoin is a scam. And most people vote. Something in this equation is like very, very wrong. In all of the functional civilizations all throughout history, it was the nobility that directed the resources, the society, the civilization, all that sort of stuff. And I think we're going to get back to that just by virtue of the fact that Bitcoin is this pristine money where ownership is a function of who has the bearer instrument. So it puts a lot of the power into these strong individuals who are able to hold it, secure it, and think about it really well. Maybe my prior statement is retracted somewhat, and Bitcoin is still the most important thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitcoin News channel. I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and today I am very grateful to be joined by Aleks Svetski. He is an entrepreneur, philosopher, and author of the Uncommunist Manifesto and the Bushido of Bitcoin. He was the founder of the Bitcoin savings app Amber and now runs the nomad and events super app SatLantis. They will explore where Bitcoin and society are headed and what kind of world we are building. Aleks, thank you for joining us.
Rob, thank you for the intro. Really good to be back, man. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes. So we met 2 years ago in El Salvador at Adopting Bitcoin. We met in person there. And since that time, it feels like you've maybe taken a little bit of a step back from the daily interactions and machinations of the Bitcoin community. So now that we're in 2025 with the ETFs, Bitcoin Treasury companies, Trump being the quote unquote crypto president, I would love to get your zoomed out view of where you think we are in terms of the market, culture, personalities, and overall health of Bitcoin.
Great question. I think I'm, as you said, a little bit more distant. I know there's some sort of raging debate now about like knots and core and, people sort of apparently fighting over the life of Bitcoin, which thankfully I haven't been dragged into. Not entirely from not caring, although if I'm being honest, like I don't really care. But more from a standpoint of like I've been busy with other things in life, A, and then B, also I don't think I have the necessary technical wherewithal or knowledge or understanding to really weigh in on it. All I can do is sort of go with instinct, and even my instinct these days is a little bit confused. I don't know which way to go about it, because there seems to be, at least from the surface level that I've felt, good arguments on both sides. In any case, beyond that, I think Bitcoin is just going through the motions of what it has to go through in a world increasingly gone mad, right? I don't sort of know what other way to put it. Is like the attention economy has turned everybody into like brain dead zombies. Like we get hysterical over everything, and I'm very much in that camp as well. It's why I've actually decided even to take a step back from Twitter and socials and everything like that. Like I haven't posted for I haven't posted since the whole Charlie Kirk thing happened, and that was sort of the last straw for me. Was I had gone offline for about a week and a bit, and I had planned to go offline for a couple of weeks. And it was actually I logged back into Twitter to send you a message to say, hey dude, enjoying the time with my kid, I'm going to stay offline for a little bit longer. And wouldn't you know it, I got sucked into the Irina girl getting stabbed in the neck by that fucking animal and all this sort of stuff. And I had lost my shit, man. And afterwards, like after about a week of not being able to sleep properly and sort of being too high on adrenaline, I stepped back and looked at it. I thought, fuck, why? Like, what did I achieve by going on this sort of online rampage and ranting and everything like that? If anything, I should have channeled that pain and hurt and everything like that into something productive, but I kind of like let it out online. So anyway, I say this because relating to your question about where I think we are in the sort of broader health and broader movement of Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin's very much like a mirror in some sense to what's happening in the world. And if the world is a little bit crazy and, it's noisy and all this sort of stuff is going on, and then kind of the Bitcoin social layer, for lack of a better term, also kind of represents that, and people have to argue about something. I mean, I still remember 2017, 2018, like there was quite a, like, I mean, yes, there was a fork, and there you had the Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, BTC crowd, and it was quite clear that there was sort of like two crowds, and then there was the crypto dorks. But now there's like 10 factions inside Bitcoin as well. So it's way more noisy. And I think that reflects very much where the world is at as well, is like there's so many more factions now. It's so much more noisy. Things happen at such a faster pace, at such a faster click, that I feel like the only way to win is to not participate. It's to step back, and I kind of am trying to take that approach with Bitcoin as well, which is, hey, the fundamentals don't seem to have changed. We still have the longest chain. It is still where the economic mass is. Whether this like sort of nuts and core debate, whatever ends up happening there, I don't think that kills Bitcoin either way, whichever thing happens. So for me, I just think we've got to go through this. It's going to bring a bunch of uncertainty. It'll bring, the price is going to test people. I know people are losing their minds like, oh, Saylor's bought all this Bitcoin, Treasury company, this and that. We should be at $1 million by now. It's like, yeah, like Bitcoin will do exactly what you don't want it to do. And we will come out of this at some point with some crazy pump, and then it'll dump again. And then we go through the next era of whatever nonsense is going to be sort of brought up at that stage. So that's my thoughts. It's like, to summarize, it's going through the motions that it's going to go through, reflecting where the state, the psychological and socio-conscious state of the world is.
Yeah, it's definitely in a state of maturation, as we see with Larry Fink talking about it. These treasury companies, ETFs, we are being entered into the world of Wall Street and financialization for sure. And I think we're missing what I first joined in 2020. I mean, it felt much more sort of punk rock, even though it was well past the cypherpunk era. But it still felt like we were this ragtag group of pirates, and we were coming in with raising our flag and saying, hey, have fun staying poor, everybody else, if you're not into Bitcoin. And I think another part of that era in 2020, like there was a bunch of great writing coming out, like Gigi, Brendan Quittem. There was all these like original thought pieces that really sort of helped push the culture forward. Where has that gone?
Yeah, dude, I spoke about this with someone the other week. I think it was with Walker or whatever, but that was like the golden age of Bitcoin, I think. It was like there was a period where the literature was great, the community was great, the mission, like all this sort of stuff. And, to some degree, I would argue even the Corona scam helped actually, because it helped give us like a common enemy. Now in sort of the absence of a common enemy, when you're winning, you start then fighting with your own people, and, you're beating each other over the head instead, which is fucking retarded. So yeah, I don't know if that era is ever going to come back, honestly. For a couple of reasons. One, I think everything that needed to be said about Bitcoin has been said. So the content, the literature, and everything is there. I'm sure people will come up with other things, etc., or whatever, but I just don't think it's almost like what it feels like to in the Austrian economic space, right? To like read Mises or something like that, and then it's kind of like you read a modern Austrian economist, and he might be good, but like, what's he really going to say that's not just a variation from what Mises or Hopper or someone else already said, right? Like it's, so I think, and that's not to compare us to like Mises or anything. It's more just to say that sort of this was the golden age of like really thinking through what this Bitcoin thing really is. And I think it also attracted a particular kind of person or character, because unlike the age before sort of the Bitcoin philosophy era, like kind of like the class of 2011, the class of 2013, even somewhat the class of 2015, they didn't really have to do a lot to earn Bitcoin. Some of them had to understand it quite a bit, but, buying 50 or 100 Bitcoin when the price was like $50 or $100, it's not a lot. That's like $5,000, $10,000. Buying 50 or 100 Bitcoin when it's like $3,000 or $5,000 or even $10,000, like that's a lot. Like, so most people didn't have that much, right? So, they ended up, they like had to really work for their Bitcoin, and they really had to like put their balls on the line. It's like, okay, fuck, I'm going to put 100 grand into this thing and I've got 10. Like, and then you sort of also realize that there was people, because the percentage difference back then was massive, you know, like $100 versus $5,000. That's 50x. Like we haven't 50x'd from 5,000 still, almost a decade later, right? Maybe not a decade, but like 7-8 years. Like whereas the 5,000 with the 500 or the 50 was not long. That was a couple years. So anyway, you kind of look at it, these other people, you feel like a pauper, but at the same time, you're like putting 100 grand into something like that. So it called forth for a kind of character that really thought much deeper about Bitcoin and what this thing is. And maybe in many ways, like all of the writing that we did back then was like cope. We were kind of like trying to convince ourselves that, you know what, I've done the right thing here. I'm sure of it. And you're kind of like telling yourself the shit. And, you know, humans have a tendency to converge around a concept. So it's like if you've said something and then someone else has said something and someone else, then you kind of all like, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not insane because he's saying something similar. And then you kind of get this birds of a feather flock together kind of effect. And yeah, it kind of created a golden age, and maybe that was akin to the golden age of when you sort of had the Austrian era, where you had the rise of, you know, early Austrian economics and sort of Nietzschean thinking and all that sort of stuff in the great Gilded Age of Europe, and likewise with the great ages of America and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I don't know. I it's kind of lamentable that it's somewhat past. And I don't know if it's ever going to come back, man.
I think it might. And I think the reason is because what you said before was, think about the founding of Bitcoin, right? We had the common enemy of the banks, you know, Occupy Wall Street. It was the financial crisis, and everybody was focused on, oh, wow, this could maybe one day provide a way out of that. Then in 2020, we're all locked down, and they do the same exact trick they did 10 years prior, print trillions of dollars, and that gave us a common enemy again. I think whatever happens next, when we face that as a society where we know they're going to print a lot of money, but there's going to be some event, right? And I think that's the kind of situation that brings the censorship resistance and the punk rock back out of Bitcoin. Because right now we are in of course, as we said, the TradFi era. And it does feel like you're right. There were people when you got in around 2017 and you bought a coin for $3 grand, $4 grand, $5 grand, you were able to put your money that you had into it and hope that this could turn into something substantial in the future, but you still had skin in the game. Now people look at it over 100K and they think, oh man, I missed the boat. I need to get into these other things. And so that's why we're seeing the Treasury companies, right? And those things have just sort of really exploded. I mean, in terms of the worst way possible. Now, I just put up a stat that said 18 of the top 105 Treasury companies publicly listed are trading at an MNAV less than 1.
Okay.
Right?
So, and that kind of, I mean, I don't know too much about the metrics there, but that kind of creates a downward sort of self-reinforcing situation, right? Or
so their market cap is smaller than the Bitcoin.
Than the amount of Bitcoin they have. Okay. Yeah,
it's insane. I mean, there's this company in the Netherlands called Treasury. They've got $122 million worth of Bitcoin. Their market cap is $16 million.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, doesn't that imply that they would be a good investment in that case, or is there something else going on there?
I mean, the question is, can they get the flywheel going? You know, once you're below an MNAV of 1, it's very hard to get the leverage and get the whole entire spinning wheel going again. What it makes them is a prime candidate to be bought out by a Saylor or a larger Treasury company, right? So yeah, I mean, you've steered away from all this stuff, these Treasury companies. What's your view of them right now?
I mean, before I give you my view on them, let me give you sort of my last. I just had a question around. So you're probably more optimistic on another sort of Renaissance age coming in, and maybe you're right. Yeah. Maybe something does come. What do you think is the catalyst to kind of get everyone on side again, and kind of?
Well, I mean, I think we see it first happening over in Europe with chat control, the Online Safety Act in the UK. They really seem to be cracking down hardcore on free speech and just your ability to express yourself. And Bitcoin is built for this underground resistance movement, right? It's money for rebels to be able to transact without a third party, without the state overlooking their shoulder and telling them what they can or cannot do. And so I think if we see this crackdown happening, and it only makes sense that as we enter the late stages of this whole fiat experiment, these states are going to get more and more strict. They're going to want to make sure that they're monitoring what people say. And so when this sort of Orwellian state is being built up around us, Bitcoin is here as a alternative. And I think that that energy will return in the resistance form as this panopticon gets built up.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, you might be right there. I mean, it's there's no shortage of opportunity for something really ridiculous to occur again, and to sort of polarize people once again into having a common enemy. So, yeah, I mean, I would hope that once again brings back some interesting sort of literature and culture and stuff like that, stuff that is worth reading, worth talking about again, that is not just fucking price and nonsense. So, okay, so I guess that leads me into then the Treasury stuff. I mean, I've gone back and forth on this. I don't know what to think at this point. I think there's one thing I do agree with, which is the idea that, hey, you could put together a corporation which is just effectively a construct where individuals can get together and do things they couldn't necessarily do as individuals alone for the express purpose of acquiring more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Whether it's been gone about the right way, I think, is probably up for debate. My feeling is that what Saylor was doing in the beginning, by raising debt, for example, was probably actually smarter, as opposed to all of these like weird equity machinations and stuff like that, which are basically like, I don't know, it's like it's obviously financial engineering, but it's not just like financial engineering. It's like, it's really fucking wacky shit. Like, it's, creating all of these like strange metrics and then trying to like sell them to people as the second coming of the capital markets and everything like that. I think it's kind of gone awry, and it's created a situation where, you've got a bunch of idiots who've come in and destroyed a lot of market value because they could just thought they could copy the playbook. And even if the playbook were to work, I would also argue that I don't think there's room for that many players. Because really, like, America's the only capital market that matters. Like, I mean, yes, some European ones, some Asian ones, maybe Brazil, but beyond that, there's no, like, maybe Australia and Canada, but there's like, what, 6 capital markets, with America still being worth fucking 95% of all of it anyway. And why the fuck would you invest in something else other than MicroStrategy anyway? So it's kind of a weird thing for me. So anyway, that's sort of my thoughts. I conceptually understand that you could do things as a group of individuals to acquire more Bitcoin. Whether the way those things have been done to date or not is intelligent is another question.
You're right. The one major advantage that corporations have over the individual is the ability to get cheap debt, right? And that was originally Saylor's method, and he got him great success. Since then, he's moved away a bit, and there's been all these different strategies. And obviously, by looking at these MNAVs, they're not doing as well as they were in the past. So will Saylor get back to that strategy? Who knows? I mean, at 640,000 Bitcoin, I mean, he'll be all right. But even if all these other treasury even if all these other companies sold,
or Saylor,
if all these other companies sold all their Bitcoin, it really wouldn't do much, I don't think, because we just had a whale sell 80,000 Bitcoin in a day, and it barely moved the market a couple $1,000 and then it jumped right back, right? So yeah, it was an experiment, and it's what I said today is halt the experiment, halt the experiment. But in talking to you right now, I mean, it's very interesting. in that you seem very comfortable with having sort of not the most hardcore opinion on things. And the old Aleks Svetski that I knew was very hardcore in all of his opinions. And so you sort of made a brand for yourself as a fiery libertarian, extremely Austrian in your thinking, but you seem to have, I don't know if mellowed out is the right word, but you've changed your thinking. And I would love to investigate how that's gone for you over the last couple of years.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So I think what I said earlier about that sort of the Charlie Kirk arena thing that made me lose my shit, I think that was kind of like the last straw. Because I'd been for a long time sort of toying with where I sit on things, and toying with how I approach my online persona and what I do online and everything. And, I kind of went back and forth with, like, I deleted my Twitter, I brought it back, I posted, I stopped posting, I was writing threads for a little bit, then I've stopped, and I was like, I felt like I kept having to force myself to do something because I had built this personal brand of someone with an opinion, right? And it was funny in the process of like writing Bushido of Bitcoin, like it's quite an opinionated book, but by the end of the book, I realized that, that I'm like, so much more to the world. Like, even, I thought I knew it all, like, by going down the Austrian rabbit hole and libertarian. I was like, yeah, this is the right modality and framework for civilization. But then as I went down the Bushido rabbit hole, then I, started really exploring things like biology and genetics and race and like, hey, was everything we've been told about fascism actually true, or was it a lie? And then I went down that rabbit hole and all these other rabbit holes, and I'm like, fucking hell, you know what? Like, things are way more complicated than, the average libertarian dork thinks it is.
I wanted to briefly interrupt today's interview to give a big shout out to our lead sponsor, Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Buy or sell instantly. Send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. Withdraw straight to cold storage. Even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon, you'll pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and save for retirement, all without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link in the description below. Use promo code BitcoinNews and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino Bitcoin and enjoy the rest of the video.
It's like, oh, my property rights and NAP and, everything is good. Well, no, it doesn't fucking work like that, because, some of these principles just don't apply to certain cultures and certain genetics and certain biology and things like that. You can't just like apply everything to everyone. And, it's almost, I've come to sort of feel like libertarianism is a little bit like communism in the sense that human beings are kind of economic units in both visions of the world, right? So it's like in the communist sort of vision of the world, everyone is an interchangeable economic unit for the whole. But in the libertarian side, it's like everyone is an interchangeable economic unit, irrespective of their beliefs, their culture, their values, their race, their biology, their DNA, and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. Human action applies to all, and it's the same. Well, that doesn't actually work out either. So there's sort of the messy middle is sort of where reality lives. These theoretic, ideas, whether it's libertarianism or communism or whatever, don't actually work out that way in the real world. And me and Saifedean sort of had a bit of a scuffle over the Trump tariffs when they happened. And, I was like all for the tariffs because I said, hey, look, a country is not an economic zone. A country is a collection of people. And if you have to sacrifice your economics for the good of the ethnos, that's a fair trade. One can do that. If you have a different orienting sort of a different orientation or a different North Star for the civilization that you're trying to put together. Sometimes, you, like a very wealthy, rich person might sacrifice his money in order to, take precautions to protect his family. And there's a longer term benefit for that as opposed to just free trade and, trading with someone who could be your enemy. So anyway, there's like what I came to realize is that there's all of this like extra complexity, and it made me, I don't know, mellowed me out to some degree, which is like, look, man, my opinions, they don't matter that much anymore because like the world moves so fast. You get on this sort of treadmill where you've got to have an opinion every fucking day just to be noticed, and then as soon as you stop having an opinion, you're forgotten, like literally forgotten. Like so that's one, and that was tiring. And then number two is like there is so much nuance in the messy middle of reality that having a really strong opinion one way or the other, like, you know, you don't know what you don't know. There's some things you can be relatively certain about, like what is a man, what is a woman, that, you know, they're very different creatures, and that Bitcoin is better money. So there's like sort of certain things that make a lot of sense to have a strong opinion on. But fuck, man, for mostly everything else in life, I'm happy to say now I don't know shit, and that's my new position.
Quote it. Yeah, when you're younger, you think that you can change the world, right? If you have the right ideas and you push them forward, have the ability to shift society. But I think as you gain a little age and perspective, you realize that the only thing you can really change, first of all, is yourself, right? And then after that, those around you. And when it comes to anything bigger, I mean, there's a few people in history who are able to do so, but for the vast majority of us, it's you and those around you. That's the change that you can make in the world. And so it's when you are able to get down onto that scale, and that's where you can make the biggest changes, right? In your everyday life. And that's the only thing that really matters to you at the end of the day is how much happiness, joy, and value are you able to have and give to your everyday life. And so I guess that leads me to another question, though. If we are to look at society on the broadest scale, what is the number one problem? Is it still the money? Do you think that if we fix the money, we can fix the world?
Not really. I think the money is a problem, certainly. I think there's like I mean, I've always sort of said this, so my opinion hasn't changed, but I think the idea of democracy and that voting is a right, and you're sort of like mass franchise, I think that's a massive problem. I think the inversion of gender roles is a massive, massive, massive problem. Like men wanting to be women, women wanting to be men, and I don't mean just trannies. I just mean like the feminization of men and the masculinization of women. That is a massive problem, and it's one that, you know, people don't want to talk about. I think there's other problems related to sort of the false narrative we were sold around multiculturalism, and also multiracialism as well. And I don't mean that in a Svetski's racist way. I mean just like we're fucking different, man. And if we kind of gloss over and ignore those differences, it's going to cost us more in the long term. Like all throughout history, every culture, every civilization, everyone has recognized cultural differences, racial differences, biological differences, etc. Like and things functioned a hell of a lot better. It's when we try to force everyone to imagine everyone was the same that we sort of started to grow angry at each other for all of these reasons that we previously weren't angry at each other about. So I think there's, you know, multiple of these problems, and the money component is just it's a amplifier of these things. So it makes all of these problems worse. You know, another great problem is the excessive leaning towards sort of money and kind of corporations as the North Star for everything. It's like, okay, what do we care about? Like, how do you measure the health of a society? GDP. It's like, well, that's not a fucking good measure. Like, who cares? Like, if you know, you could have great GDP and turn your whole fucking city into a McDonald's on every corner, right? Like, that doesn't look great. That's not nice. Like, you know, and the McDonald'sification of the world isn't great. Like, you want to have these different cultures. So, yeah, I think there's multiple of these problems. I don't know which is the worst, but certainly, like, they, you know, a lot of tackling needs to be done. I wonder, and this is probably going to get me fucking burnt at the stake, but whatever. I might go out on a limb and say the biggest problem is the fact that probably the over feminization of the world, and the fact that strong men are not leading anymore. Because if you have strong men in positions of power, they can kind of channel that power in a way that is effective. And that might just be even more important than, or as important as fixing the money. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, you've also said that Bitcoin could possibly lead to a future of feudalism, where there is a new nobility class and that they are led mainly by responsibility, right? And the responsibility to those in which they lead, and having vast resources gives you the power to affect change in ways that are much greater than we can today. So is that still on your radar? Do you think Bitcoin and feudalism
that's
are...
literally what I mean. Yeah, that's literally what I mean. That is like strong men who become the new nobility. Like, I kind of think about, and some people might once again think, oh, Alex has got his head up his ass, but like, I'm thinking about, now that I've had a son, and I think about, the life that I want to provide for him, and he's going to grow up very different to me. I grew up to two, Eastern European parents who had come to Australia, worked their ass off, worked 2 jobs each. We grew up poor, but sort of like low middle class, and we kind of climbed our way out of that shit. But, I never had, the same kind of opportunities that my son's going to have. Like, my son's going to grow up flying on business class. Like, I didn't get on a flight until I was 13 years old, right? So it's like, the world has fundamentally changed, and those of us with Bitcoin, like, we're going to be able to pass wealth, but not just monetary wealth in the form of Bitcoin, but like psychological wealth. Like, I think about the things I want to teach my son versus what my dad taught me. My dad didn't teach me shit. He was too busy fucking working as a cleaner and as a, at the meat factory and the abattoir and this and that. Like, he didn't teach me anything. So what did I get taught by? Arnold, Stallone, and Van Damme films. Fucking watching Van Damme and Bloodsport fucking sidekick someone in the head. So like, it was, and school, right? Which doesn't teach you much. So, my son's going to have a very different upbringing. So he is going to be the first in a line of men that are going to start developing what I would call noble characteristics. And that comes with a lot of responsibility. Like, all throughout history, the nobles were the ones who kept a check on civilization. They kept a check on the royalty. They kept a check on the warrior class. In fact, the warrior class were often the nobility as well. So they kept things, they secured the borders from external threats, but they also maintained some sort of order internally, both with their own people that were below them, who they were charged with protecting and overseeing and judging as well, but also with, quote unquote, the leadership class, particularly the royalty, because the royalty was dependent on this warrior noble class. So I think we're going to see the rise of that again, and that is a far better framework for civilizational stability and robustness than the horse shit that we've kind of tried to like tangled ourselves up in with democracy and giving everybody a vote and, having a bunch of retards have the same say. Because, if we're being honest, most people are retarded. Like, and, most people eat seed oils, right? Like, that right there. And most people think Bitcoin is a scam. And most people vote, right? So there's something in this equation is like very, very wrong, right? So, sort of in all of the functional civilizations all throughout history, it was the nobility that directed the resources and the direction of the culture, the society, the civilization, the economy, and all that sort of stuff. And I think we're going to get back to that just by virtue of the fact that, Bitcoin is this pristine money where ownership is a function of who has the key and who has the bearer instrument. So it puts a lot of the power into these strong individuals who are able to hold it, secure it, and think about it really well. And it puts a hell of a lot of responsibility on their shoulders as well with respect to how they are going to show up, and how they're going to represent themselves in the world. So anyway, I think that all ties in very much, and maybe actually Bitcoin solves the feminization problem actually, because it'll mean that strong men, because the definition of a strong man is the man who can bear the most responsibility and, very importantly, still be excellent. So that right there is the kind of character that you want in leadership positions. So in that sense, yeah, maybe my prior statement is retracted somewhat, and Bitcoin is still the most important thing. We'll see.
Well, one thing standing in the way of excellence in the modern world is the state itself. And so what do you see happening to modern nation states over the course of this century? And does the nobility fill a vacuum once they fall apart, or does the nobility infiltrate them and reimagine them from within?
Well, I think we don't have nation states anymore. I think what we have is these quasi-commercial, communist, multicultural states.
Still holding your Bitcoin on an exchange? Well, you're not alone. A lot of people hesitate because the jump to self-custody can feel overwhelming. The hardware, the seed phrase, and the risk of losing it all if you make a mistake. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is the hardware wallet from the team behind Square and Cash App. It comes out of the box as a 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet without the complicated setup of a traditional multi-sig. No seed phrases to memorize, no worries when life happens. And with a built-in inheritance feature, your Bitcoin can be passed on safely to loved ones. It's simple, it's secure, it's self-custody without the stress. Get 10% off at bitkey.world. That's bitkey.world with the code Bitcoin News. Now back to the show.
Like France is no longer for the French, right? Germany is no longer for the Germans. America is no longer for the Americans. Australia is no longer for the Australians, etc., etc. Like, the only places that still have somewhat of a semblance of a nation state, you could argue, is like Japan and China, maybe some other Asian countries. So I actually hope, and this is a big 180 for me, right? Because I used to be the one bagging out the idea of a nation state. A state, like, first of all, I'll say a state will always exist. The question is what kind of state. I think the libertarian fallacy is that there will be a state without a state, right? So no, like, and you'll sort of see libertarians tangle themselves up, and Murray Rothbard is one of these ones where he ends up kind of making this whole argument for private property and corporations, and everything is private, and then you sort of have these arbiters, and then above the arbiters is like these insurance companies, and they're basically like the megacorps behind everything, right? So the organizational framework for this state, because it is a form of state, is one where it's an economic North Star, right? It's like, does it make money or not? Does it make profit or not? Whatever. And, you could argue about its time preference and whether it's a low or high time preference or whatever. But, that is very much impacted by whoever is on the steering wheel at the time, right? But basically the libertarian argument is that the economic dimension is the most important dimension around which to orient the state. The nation state suggests that it's around a shared ethnos, a shared race. I've actually come to believe that that's more important than the libertarian conception of an economic one. There is other ones. There's religious states. There could be, I don't know, a fucking gender state, like or a warrior state like the Spartans, whatever. So I think we will see, the concept of a state will never die. So that's first sort of a big thing that I've come to realize, which is contrary to my prior libertarian leanings. The second question is like, what then constitutes the organizational element of the state? And I think we will see the rise of all of these different kinds, right? There'll be Muslim states, Christian states, this state, that state, ethnic state here, ethnic state there. I think the one saving grace, which is a real positive from Bitcoin, is that all of these different kinds of states, assuming they adopt some of a Bitcoin standard, their economic layer will be really sound. So maybe they don't even need to become full-on libertarian economic states. maybe they can become like maybe Utah kind of secedes and creates sovereignty, and they become a Mormon state on a Bitcoin standard. And that's what they are. And then Texas secedes and becomes like the gunslinging oil state that eats, fucking beef all day, but also on a Bitcoin standard. And, very different culture, possibly, religious variant, etc. But, and then they form an alliance. And that is to me quite interesting. But they would ultimately sort of have a state around a dimension that is more than economic, that is religious or cultural based or belief based or something like that. So that's where I think we're going. I think that's 50 years, 100 years. I kind of touch on it actually in Bushido of Bitcoin at the end of the book. I wrote a story setting the world in 2084, and I talk about these executive states which are run by CEO kings against these homogenous CBDC blobs that are like large homogenous megastates that are effectively, quasi-communist shitholes, effectively. You got like New Brussels versus like New Alexandria. And, there's the Free State of Texas, the Kingdom of El Salvador, the Free State of Singapore and all this sort of stuff in there. And they form an alliance amongst themselves, because they all operate on a common monetary standard. And I like it's a fictional story, obviously. And shout out to Guy Swan. He just did the Audible. I recommend get that fucking Audible. The read he did of the story is so good, man. It's so fucking good. Like it's a 10 out of 10. He killed it. But it's a story, but I do think it's got I don't know, to blow my own fucking horn here. I think it's one of the more accurate science fiction stories ever written because it takes into account the reality of not only Bitcoin and the existence of Bitcoin, but how I've come to understand the complexity and the nature of human organization and governance, which will involve more than just organizing around money, everything that we just discussed.
What you just described sounds very much like Balaji's idea of the network state, right? Sort of?
No, sort of. I think Balaji's idea is a little bit more gay. It's very, I don't know, it's a bit like, it's too techno-utopian. I don't think, because he's very much like, we organize in a digital space and then we, come to a place for a while. Like, it's close. That's probably the closest. But like, I would just say, minus all the soy and the sort of the techno contraptions and thinking we're going to live forever and all that sort of stuff. Like the what do you call it? The transhumanism element. Like I think that's a fad.
Yeah.
So
No,
but
I understand what you're saying, but I think that it's sort of a transition to what you're going to, right? Where we are landed people with a unified idea, belief of what we are, and we're in this place together because we share these beliefs together. And yeah, having Bitcoin to be the economic layer that allows these different quote unquote kingdoms to interact and peacefully trade with each other, it couldn't be done with anything else, right? You need this Bitcoin. Well, looking off into the future, not to the too distant future, but we have AI. And you had a business, a Spirit of Satoshi, looking into AI, messing around with that. In the beginning, when many people had no idea what was going on with LLMs, you were deep into it. And it seems as if you don't think it's the real deal. That it's the tool that people can use to be a little bit more productive, but it's not going to cause societal change on a major level within the next decade. I personally disagree, but I would love to hear your standpoint as to why that is.
I mean, to clarify, I think it'll certainly create some level of change. I think it'll make people a lot stupider. I just don't view it too far off from an iPhone, right? In terms of its impact, I kind of put it in the realm of a tool. I think much like any other tool that we've had all throughout history, whether it was the tractor or the car or the factory or whatever, like what these things do is they allow us to do more with less. And I don't think it's any different here with AI. I don't think it's going to come alive. I don't think it's ever going to be sentient, because I think the complexity that is general intelligence is like, I mean, you just had a kid. I just had a kid. Like, just that process is so fucking, like, when you think about like the infinite fractals, if you kind of like zoom into the process and zoom out of the process, it's like, it's so much more broad than sort of this like narrow computational intelligence that we've managed to, maybe scratch the surface of with these LLMs. But yeah, I mean, I'm firmly in the camp of, this is a very powerful tool for digital productivity, automation, and sort of like the ability to do much more with less. But as with every single tool, like, there's a price to pay for it. Like, humanity's greatest strength is also our greatest weakness, which is adaptability. I remember reading Man's Search for Meaning when I was younger, and Viktor Frankl discusses it in there when he was in the prison camps. Was he outlined that like human beings can adapt to anything, even sleeping on top of each other in the cold, freezing, and all this sort of stuff. So we can adapt down and we can adapt up. And when it comes to tooling, like, we've gotten so good with tools, like, just look at the sort of the construction industry. Like, we can build an apartment with, concrete and this and that and CAD drawings and everything like that, and, put these beautiful apartments together that our ancestors could never have, imagined. But we've lost the ability to build like the beautiful cathedrals with the handcrafted murals and all this sort of stuff. We can't do that anymore. So we gave up one for the other. There's the older I get, the more I realize everything is some kind of trade-off. Even another example, like 20 years ago when I was young and I was knocking on doors, doing door-to-door sales, before we had these things and had Google Maps, we used to have the big books with the street maps, the street map books in the car. So we would get a photocopy of that shit in the sales office, get it handed out to everyone, and then get dropped off in the middle of wherever the fuck you were, and then you had to go knock on doors and figure out your way, and then meet at a particular point. And there was no Google Maps, there was none of that stuff. And man, I had developed such a keen ability to navigate no matter where you dropped me. And even if I'd never been there before, it didn't matter. Like, I just had this sixth sense developed in me. I had navigation skills. Now, like, I've kind of like lost a lot of that, and I find myself often like, I'm in town and I'm driving home and I'll turn on Google Maps. Like, why am I doing this? I know the way, so like I turn it off now, like, actively. But man, young people these days, you take the phone away, bro, they will get lost walking down the street in a fucking straight line. So to tie it back to AI, like, I know a lot of Gen Zs like that are actually, I would call them super based, like really, really not the fry your brain zombified Gen Z that thinks there's 6,000, genders. I'm talking like super based young guys. But even them, ask them a question and their tendency is to respond with something ChatGPT-esque, or to kind of outsource their thinking that way. And I wonder what the cost of that is going to be. I think that's going to be a very interesting impact on society. So that's sort of my position is, I think it's a powerful tool. I don't think it's going to take over the world or anything like that. And I think it's going to have a strange effect on the people who use it as a crutch excessively.
I agree with everything you said, but I think you're missing the point that a lot of the jobs that people have can be brought down to simple processes that these AI, LLMs, computers are going to be able to solve, right? I mean, we're not too far away from truck driving being an obsolete job, And just look at the jobs in America. We went from, in 1990, the majority of people were in manufacturing. Now the majority of people are in healthcare, and they're not doctors, they're administrators. an LLM can do the job of a healthcare administrator. Like, it's not that far off from it being able to book appointments or balance books, right? And that's going to cause societal change. If these people don't have jobs, again, we're looking, what you also said before is the meaning crisis, right? If a lot of people derive their meaning from their work, and without it, they're lost. And we're already seeing, I mean, the depths of despair, the fentanyl use, the stuff is already having an effect, I feel like. And so to say that it's just another tool like the tractor, but the tractor itself, right? You used to need 100 people to plow a field. Now you need one.
Yeah.
And soon,
yeah.
that's why, but I mean,
that's why I kind of put it in the same bucket, right? So it's going to do the same thing that the tractor did to an agricultural economy. It's the same thing that we did to the manufacturing economy, the industrial economy, we're doing now to the sort of the cerebral administrative economy.
Yeah.
But so my prediction is that we're going to see the rise of the experience economy. That's going to be the next thing. People are going to want to experience stuff. Alongside that, you've had this sort of obviously the growth of the attention economy, and the attention economy is sort of the rise of social media and Netflix and all that sort of stuff. And the attention economy and the experience economy are going to be somewhat related. But I don't expect the experience economy to ever be as big as the attention economy, because most people are just fucking zombies that'll spend the rest of their lives scrolling on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever the new flavor of social media app is. But I think with all of this, we're going to see a massive resurgence, and it's already happening. Like, the number of events in 2025 was almost double, like the number of in-person events was almost double what we had in 2019. When you count like conferences and meetups and retreats and all of this sort of now there's like run clubs and this and health clubs and wellness retreats and all, like there's a massive boom of people wanting to do stuff in real life. And that's just going to create an entirely new economy where, the administrative stuff will most likely be handed off to some sort of LLM or some sort of, process that is automation. Because again, this is AI to me. I can replace the word with process automation. That's what it is for me. And that will happen. But what people are then going to want is like a facilitator at a retreat, right? Someone to work with, like someone to build a relationship with. I'm sure we'll end up seeing like a fully AI autonomous restaurant. And some people are going to want to eat there. But I'll tell you what, the more of those that happen, the more people are also going to search for an authentic restaurant where the grandma is in back cooking and like making the food authentic, and they'll pay extra for that shit because it's done by a human. So I think all of this stuff balances itself out. I'm not too concerned, honestly. But yeah, that's why I kind of stand by the idea that it's like a tractor. It's a similar sort of shift, because it's just going to obsolete the kind of the main thing that we're doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And whatever scenario plays out, Bitcoin, you're going to want to have it, right?
So it's the only real thing that's there, in amongst all this other digital fucking nonsense.
And so before we go, I wanted to ask you about your process. So you are a particularly prolific person. I mean, you write, you run businesses, you obviously travel. Now you've got a kid. What is your daily routine like, and how are you able to have so much output?
Yeah, my routine is not as good as I would like it to be, but I think that's kind of the standard answer from perfectionists. I'm just always trying to improve it. When my routine is good, I will get up and I will do work that requires the most like creative thinking. I make an effort actually not to use anything like ChatGPT or whatever when I'm writing or creating something, unless it's for quick research purposes or unless it's for synthesizing my notes. So if I've taken a bunch of notes, and because I get these like, I don't know, if I'm in the toilet or I'm at the gym or I'm in, before bed or wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh, fuck, this is a mad idea. And just like write it out. And then if I want to synthesize it, I might use ChatGPT. Although that to me is actually one of the most annoying times when I use ChatGPT, because it always like, injects its like horseshit linguistic mess in there, and then I have to like kind of like take that out and put Svetski back into it. But it is what it is. It kind of helps me at least like get it onto a page. But yeah, I try and do my more thinking oriented stuff early. And then I used to go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week, like a maniac. Now I try and go like 3 days, and then the other days I try and do just stretching. So that's the old Svetski talking. the hinges are starting to creak, so I got to keep that stuff going. And yeah, when I'm in good routine, I will try and structure my week where sort of 2 of the days of the week are more like deep work, and then the other days are meetings. I have not been that successful, I must admit. I end up, my fallback is often just sheer will and determination of just like, man, I've got so much shit to get done, and I just like fucking go hard. And I have like all of these lists everywhere. I've got like lists written on paper. I've got notes written on my stickies on my Mac. Then I've got my reminders full of notes, and then I've got my Apple Notes full of notes. I've got shit everywhere. But somehow I kind of like keep these all together, and I have my urgents, my new urgents, my urgent list. And like sort of like list is a very important part of what I do as well. And in doing that, actually, there's probably another kernel of utility there, is that I am constantly trying to pull up things that are sort of the 20% that make 80% of the difference. And I pull them into my urgent or my urgent important whatever list. And often just by doing those, some of the other stuff just like fades away. I've got shit on I'm looking at it now, my new urgent list in my reminders is 56 things long. And the most important stuff is like right at the top of the list. And then I'm always like reprioritizing, reordering. So that way I've kind of like got it out of my brain and it's here. Funny thing though, in saying that, I just realized my memory is not what it used to be. And I actually have a feeling that is partly because I try and outsource a lot of my memory to notes. So fuck, I'm a hypocrite. So just like AI people are outsourcing their thinking, at least I haven't outsourced my thinking yet, but I'm outsourcing my memory and I'm losing it. So, but yeah, that's it's not a clean process. When I was writing the Bushido of Bitcoin, I had a much better process. Like I would get up in the morning early, I would write, go to the gym, come back, write, and then get into working on Spirit Satoshi or whatever I was doing at the time. Now it's a lot more messy that I'm not writing anymore. And yeah, it's mainly building. But now that I also have the baby, it's the schedule is a little bit more flexible. And yeah, it's funny how life just, there's no such thing as free time. Life will just fill itself in every nook, cranny and crevice that you have. I remember when I was finishing the book, I was like, fuck, I'm going to have so much more time now. It's like, yeah, right, asshole.
No such thing.
Here you go. So yeah, that's my attempt at an answer.
I hear you. Yeah, it is so important to set blocks, and to try to be uninterrupted and get that creative focused work out where there's no distractions. Absolutely. Well, Svetski, that was an awesome hour. We covered a lot of ground and a lot of things for people to think about. Absolutely. So your main project right now is SatLantis. If people want to figure out more about it, where should they go? What should they look into?
Yeah, they should go to SatLantis.io. It ties into what I mentioned earlier. So, I mean, if people have heard me talk about it in the past, there was this whole big vision about building like a social app for sovereign individuals and nomads and travelers and all this sort of stuff and Bitcoiners. And we kind of, in the last couple of months, we've really simplified it. And I've realized that I don't want to build a social app. I don't care about the attention economy anymore. I don't care about like competing neither with like the incumbents, like the Instagrams and everything in the world, because one, I can't beat them, but also I don't want to compete with like the primals of the world, because primal is just doing a fantastic job for the content and attention economy on Nostr. So what I realized is like, I want to use the social graph for context, not content, and then build it into an events app. So, people out there might be familiar with meetup.com or Luma, which is one of the great new apps out there, unfortunately run by shitcoiners. What we've basically done with SatLantis is turned it into the Bitcoin native Luma with a social layer. So, if you're connected with people on Nostra, you can see what they're doing and where they're going and stuff like that. A bit like what Facebook was like, 15, 20 years ago, when you see, this friend is going to that event or they checked in here or whatever. So that's kind of the essence of it. It's a much simpler app. And it's just like create beautiful events in 30 seconds. You can do ticketing in Bitcoin, which means that anyone anywhere in the world now can actually spin up an event and get paid. I didn't even realize that you actually, we're kind of blessed in the West because we can do that with Eventbrite or Luma or something like that. But if you're in Latin America, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, you don't have fucking Stripe. You don't have good fiat rails. You don't even have a good events app. So I realized we're actually solving a big problem here with this app by making a truly global events app with Bitcoin native ticketing and a bit of a social layer. So anyway, that ties into what I mentioned earlier about this whole experience economy, and that's kind of what I'm building for now. So yeah, I'm in a really good place. If people want to know about SatLantis, they can check it out. But I feel like I'm slowly aligning my life with my desire to become more private and my business and how I want to live more in the real world, less in the digital world, and hopefully make my small impact in that corner of the universe as I move forward.
And you're still orange pilling people in a sly, roundabout way with these events and Bitcoin payments. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that the mission still continues.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So yeah, that's it. And if people do want to read the Bushido of Bitcoin, bushidoofbitcoin.com. That's the book I published. I don't know if we ever even spoke about that on a previous podcast or not. I think we did in the beginning when I started writing it. But yeah, that's officially out. And don't even buy the book. Actually, go and get Guy Swan's reading of it. It's so fucking good. Guy's a legend. So go, and he gets paid for that. I get a little bit out of it, but he's he did such a good job with that. So highly recommended.
Cheers. Well, thank you, Aleks. Until next time.
Thank you, sir. Until next time.
Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you could drop a like and a share, it would help in our mission to accelerate adoption. If you're looking for more Bitcoin signal, join over 10,000 readers of our newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly. Every Monday morning, we send out the biggest headlines of Bitcoin to keep you in the know in under 5 minutes. Links below in the description. Then come hang with us live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We break it all down live on stream with a new guest, and you can add your 2 sats in the chat. See you next week.